Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Huber. On today's episode, which is number 125, we're talking about relaunching ShopNotes Magazine. That's right. In addition to the podcast, we're going to relaunch the magazine. So I'm joined today by John and Dillon, and we're going to talk about what ShopNotes means to us and why we're launching it and what we hope to provide other woodworkers with as we get this thing started. So I hope you enjoy today's show. All right. Now, a couple of years ago when we launched this podcast, I very deliberately called it the ShopNotes Podcast because there's a strong enthusiasm for ShopNotes and
a yearning.
The fact that it was a great magazine and we had a lot of people who really loved it. And I'm happy to announce that later this fall, we will be relaunching ShopNotes Magazine. So after lots of arm twisting and the holy crap moments of what it actually means to start publishing another magazine, we are deep into the process. So if you've been following us on our Facebook updates on Thursdays, you've seen a couple of the projects already that we have getting started. One of the things that'll be different is the fact that ShopNotes will be a digital publication. So it'll be quarterly, and it'll be a digital subscription. Right now, if you know anything about the printing and postage world, paper is very difficult to come by in our crazy world that we live in and supply chains and all that kind of stuff. And the post office is doing nobody any favors on mailing costs. So to get this off the ground, light this candle, we've decided to do it as a digital publication. If there's a lot of interest and we can make it work financially, we will do so in a print format, but right now it's a digital magazine. So
yep. It's out there now. Now we have to do it.
Right.
You've told everybody.
Yep.
So no going back.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned quarterly, or it's going to be a digital release quarterly, but we've talked about dollarly printing the past year, or yearly, dollarly, yearly, however you put your quarters together.
Right. Yep.
Is having a printed, like, kind of yearbook.
Right. Yeah.
As a separate product.
Yeah. Because I do think that there is value, and it maybe just reflects the fact that I'm a Gen Xer, in a tangible physical object in our virtual world. So what I'd like to do is collect the projects into a single collectible, well-published, well-produced book. So,
yeah, I think that would be a good addition. Just, I'm the same way, that it's like I'm still adjusting to working in the digital world. I liked printing off paper and doing the editing that way and having a physical thing to read and handle, and so yeah. I think that's a good thing too.
Right. So. Now, you worked on ShopNotes in the past, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was one of my favorite magazines. Still read the old issues and build stuff out of the magazine. So I'm happy that it's coming back, and we'll be able to come up with some new stuff and get out there and mix it up with all the woodworking nerds and turn Chris Fitch loose in his mad science lab. So it should be fun.
So now you guys each have a project that you're designing for this first issue. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we actually both have two.
Oh, do I? I don't know. I didn't do the required reading. I think one of mine might have got pushed back to future issue.
Yeah,
that's the one that I've had done for like a year or two. So go figure. So yeah, right now I'm working on getting drawings together for a tool cabinet, more in the realm of like kind of an heirloom tool cabinet display type thing rather than utility. I mean, it will be utility, but something that'll look nice too. So something that you'd be proud to display anything in, but we're doing it for tools because this is Shop Notes.
Right.
So that's what we do.
Well, I think that's the whole point of Shop Notes, is being able to go a little bit over the top, a little more complex in the shop projects, because it's for people who are super excited about creating that space where they do their woodworking. You know, that it's not just an open area that projects get built in, but it's I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a refuge or a sanctuary or...
Yeah. Well, and, you know, outside of the projects that are, again, tool-oriented, you know, I think a lot of what drives the inspiration for a lot of at least the storage projects, is just trying to not overthink things and just design shop pieces as furniture. So if it's something that you want to have in your shop, you know, you don't, again, I think it gets tough, again, out of the realm of just thinking about hand tools or doing kind of a shop-made version of course, we did a CNC. We've talked about doing, you know, like a shop version of a domino machine with like a handheld like trim router. So outside of that stuff, it's kind of like, how do we kind of elevate these other necessities of a shop, which, you know, there's of course storage, in-feed, out-feed tables, just tables in general. So there's just a lot to work within that framework. And again, like you said, Phil, is just to kind of create your own space. They don't have to be, again, specific to what we're designing here. You know, it could just be a jumping off or a starting point for, you know, say you just liked the amount of storage or you like the scale of the project. You know, there's endless possibilities with the general aesthetic of the piece. So again, you're ultimately just trying to create a space that you like to be in as, again, this kind of refuge.
So what's your project, Dylan?
I have a couple of them. Like John, I have one that is complete. I'm pretty excited about it. It was, again, I guess you can kind of act as my attorney here, Phil, about what I can and cannot disclose. But I have a workbench that we did. We figured we'd go out with a bang and start with, you know, a big workbench project. It is a little more contemporary in design. The top itself is kind of interesting. We're using a Baltic birch plywood that's laminated to expose the plies as the work surface. So that's kind of cool. It makes for a very structurally rigid and I guess aesthetically pleasing bench. So using plywood as a top is a stable material. We've kind of done it in, I don't want to say in conjunction with, but it was kind of inspired by the H&T Gordon vices that they do. So we incorporated a tail vise as well as one of their 9-inch face vices into our project that have a little bit more of a kind of modern feel to it. So that was initially what inspired the project. Yeah. And we paired that with some stainless handles. So again, there's just kind of a play off materials, and then it's just a really kind of clean design. So functionally it's great, and aesthetically it's great too. So it was a good project to be a part of. The other one I'm working on currently is a German style hand plane, which has been kind of been kicked down the road quite a bit. It's a smaller project, but certainly a very necessary one. But I don't think we've ever done a German style hand plane before that's got the horned handle on the front. It'll probably be a 2-part body construction. I kind of keep going back and forth. I did a jack style plane for Pop Wood about a year ago, and I kind of leaning towards doing a wooden wedge and a blade with or without a chip breaker. I haven't really decided. So I've kind of been getting hung up on minutia with that, but it's going to be available as a jack and or smoothing plane. So we'll probably, they'll be the exact same look. They just one will have a little bit longer sole on it, or bed on it than the other. So those are the two I have for the first issue. And one's complete. Sweet. And one's not. But we're making grounds.
Yeah, going back to your workbench, if people follow the weekly Facebook Live, they've had a chance to see Mark building that and the completed workbench. But I would definitely consider it to be like the concept car of workbenches, where it's, kind of, out there a little bit and not, at least not traditional. It's got like, some things you wouldn't think of and some different features. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I kind of feel like there's been I don't know. And I'm in it too, is that there's a little bit of a design rut that woodworking benches have to follow some kind of antique, ancient design. And there's definitely room for new expressions of the form that take into all account different materials or a different look that you're going for or whatever, and I'm just really excited for this new workbench just because it has such a striking look to it, but still checks all the boxes of what you need in a workbench.
Right.
And that kind of plays into, we had some criticism a couple of issues ago in Woodsmith. We had a router table on the cover, and somebody wrote in saying that we just don't need any more router tables. Magazines have done them to death, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like you could say that with insert any project here, that all the woodworking magazines have done them. And I mean, that's something that in the past we've had a challenge with ShopNotes, is coming up with different shop projects. Like how many workbenches has Woodsmith and ShopNotes done over the years? A lot. However, I kind of look at it in the same way that, like everybody's workshop situation is different, both in scale and location and the types of projects that you build. And, both our practical needs and aesthetic choices make us all unique. So I feel like there's room for all kinds.
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly revisiting old projects just because we're kind of just anticipating that there's always going to be somebody new, and that these aren't the same people that have been subscribing for 40 years. Not that we don't take them into consideration, but the shop workplace is just always evolving, and it's certainly like a large part of our job is just elevating old forms. We're not reinventing wheels here. I mean, as much as we'd like to sometimes, and there are those kind of projects where like, wow, these are just incredibly unique. Just so much of what we do is just trying to, again, revisit projects or tools and things that are prominent within any workshop, and just kind of to recreate those to kind of fit, somebody else's, need. But it also just, continues to spark interest in us too.
Right. The other thing I think with shop projects is that we a lot of times will keep them around here and use them and have them in our shop, and we'll learn something from that project and want to revisit it to make an improvement. Either there might have been a change in materials or tools available or techniques, and we're always thinking of a better way to do things or how to change things up. So it's just constant prototyping, and it's good to revisit because there's always new people coming into the craft, and we're trying to improve too. So
yeah, I mean, I do like that idea of experimentation, because I know that it's really tempting to want to be like, these are the tools that I have in my shop, and this is the setup that I want to have, and now it is fixed for all time. But we change and grow as woodworkers, and I've built countless jigs of or shop storage things or whatever, and tried them out. They've worked really well, then they don't work as well, and then I move them along to somebody else and try something else just to match either shop space or my approach to tools or whatever. I think of some of our table saw sleds that we've built, that you can take kind of the bare bones basic sled version, and then you can go super deluxe, whatever. And there's room all in between for different iterations of that.
Yeah. And we're not really a production shop either. So a lot of things we do build, again, they're for the purpose of designing something that someone else can build. However, again, we're hardly ever set up to do the same thing over and over and over again. And even if we are, there's something that's changed about it that, again, warrants manipulating the whether it be a table saw sled or a miter gauge that we built for a router table. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just alluding to what John said, is that something is always going to change, and you don't really know what needs to change until you find yourself using that particular item. So
yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I think that's what kind of makes us, as much as people, when they come tour our shop space here, are all excited about the size of it and the equipment that we have a lot in common with your average hobby woodworkers, in the sense that, like you said, we're not building multiples of things. Everything is a one-off, so it's almost like it's like every project is our first day and we get to try it out. So that's where a lot of those shop projects come from, either needs in our own workshop or our home shops, or interests, or just curiosity.
I'd also mentioned to you, I think it was yesterday, Phil, too, about just building a project in real time. It's like, you can sit around and think about all of the details for a project, but oftentimes something changes during that construction process. It's like you can't predict everything, and a lot of times you are kind of just making decisions as you're building something. You're having those kind of realizations or aha moments when you're in the mix of it. So again, I'm just kind of hammering the same nail on the head here, but again, all projects are valid, even old ones.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny how the design and build process works. It always, like, as I start thinking of concepts for designs and going through designing and drawings, and then it's always funny how it's how did I get to this point? How did I get to the end? I started with an idea down, a seed, planted a seed, and then I don't know how I got to the end, but it always works out. But yeah, there's always things that we want to change and improve, but it goes out the door in the magazine, and that's it.
Yeah, and I also think, for example, I'm working on, we're coming up to deadline on an issue of Woodsmith, and the shop project in it I'm writing, and John, you designed it, and I'm taking the approach on it, and I kind of view it this way with all of our projects, but since we're talking about ShopNotes, it's the same thing, where, the project that you did was a shop storage set of cabinets, like a base unit and then an upper. And we have a variety of storage features built into it. And I almost don't want people to build it just as we show it in the magazine, because it's more like a catalog of storage ideas within this basic form. And depending on what your specific needs are, you might omit some of them or double up or whatever, just to suit what you're trying to get to. So it's, look at the projects in terms of inspiration, and in the fact of, like our earlier example on workbenches. Say we've done 15 workbenches. Well, when you make your own workbench, pull out different things from those other benches, put it together into something that is, fun for you to make and use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the project you're talking about. It's a power tool storage workstation. And when I started designing that, it started out as just a wall cabinet storage thing, and then it kind of morphed into, well, what if I had it storage and kind of an integrated work surface or staging area? So it kind of, progressed as the design went through, and there was just a lot of different ways you could go as far as the storage, because everybody has different tools. So I kind of just based it off of what tools I had or we had around here. So a pretty big variety of tools that not everybody might have. But yeah, you're definitely right that it's kind of compartmentalized, where you just kind of pull out the ideas that work best for you, and you can kind of mix and match, and it's just a jumping off point of ideas, really.
Yeah, and just the way that things evolve over time, in the sense that early on when I was hearing you guys talk about this project, I got the idea that it was like a power tool, like a cordless tool station.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so we've had these cordless tool stations from way back in ShopNotes where it's just a shelf to put your charger and a space to put a drill. And it's like, who has one drill anymore? Or who has just one cordless tool? So now you have to juggle probably multiple chargers because you're sitting in different tool voltages maybe and different scatterings of what your tools are, because you're going to have a jigsaw and a cordless circular saw and a drill and an impact driver and a smaller drill. And where do these go? Because nobody's going to use the cases that they come in.
Right. And then you have all the little extra pieces of bits and blades and drivers and all the stuff that goes with it that you kind of have to keep close and organized and all that stuff too to consider. Yeah, the other thing is I find hard is that like I'm exposed to so much around here and like projects we build from the show or projects I've seen in the magazine. It's hard to like differentiate. It's like I'm pulling from all these inspirations, but then it's like, how do I go different than that? Or how do I improve? Or how do I pull in ideas, the best ideas from several projects but yeah, just a lot of influences.
Sure.
So.
Dillon, you're new to ShopNotes, having been hired after ShopNotes was ended. So how are you viewing this relaunch and designing projects for it?
Well, I'm definitely someone who feels more comfortable designing furniture-based projects. We've kind of it seems like we've always hit a stride with Chris designing all of the shop-made projects and that are tool-based. And I've done some smaller hand tools here and there, which I've gotten a lot of joy out of doing, kind of broadening my sort of creative horizons and getting over the hurdle of just doing something new. But it's nice kind of having these. Well, they're 3 different magazines now, but it's nice just having different outlets for your kind of sense of imagination. So I'm definitely hopeful. I think for me it's gonna be a little more of an opportunity to again do some more design work with the actual tools and again redefining what shop furniture is. Again, I think we'll probably get into a groove. Ultimately we'd all like to be doing a couple projects per issue between John, Chris, and I, but keeping it diverse, but also all of us trying new things, maybe kind of stepping outside of our comfort zone a little bit. So I think there will be a little bit more opportunity for that. Not that there isn't for Woodsmith or Popwood, but just because ShopNotes is so more, it's a little bit more shop focused and specific, where we've kind of been trying to integrate all these different types of projects in one magazine, at least since I've been at Woodsmith and working for Popwood. So it's nice that there's a home for everything now. Again, not that anything's really been off the table, but I think it just provides us a little more opportunity to just kind of try anything. So, and plus, I think that, like you talked about too, it being digital, I think that's cool because we're not really hung up on this page count thing and how things are going to fit. So we've been working with doing a little bit different layout, one that I think kind of existed towards the end of ShopNotes. So there's going to be a little bit different look to it. So we'll need to be a little more focused. But again, I think we're not going to be, there's a lot of autonomy and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to just, write and do something a little new. So I'm definitely hopeful. And it'll be a lot less expensive for us too. We're not pushing out a magazine. So, and trying to get it, shipped out to a bunch of people. They'll have access to it almost probably instantaneously on the internet.
And we have all this free labor.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, low overhead.
Yeah, I think the good thing about, you said furniture design and stuff is for ShopNotes Magazine, you can design really like beautiful furniture and then just put tools in it, and now it's a tool cabinet. Or design a really beautiful jewelry box and put your chisels in it, and now it's a tool chest. So you can just go kind of nuts on that.
To be clear, we're still going to offer shop projects in Woodsmith Magazine, so that's not going to change anything there. It's just allowing us, like we've said, to kind of nerd out on our inner shop geek with having a complete different focus for ShopNotes Magazine. One of the things that I really want to do is Chris has found a strong interest in CNC work, and he's been doing a lot of that on his CNC Basecamp show. We're offering plans that go with that, but in ShopNotes, I know he's wanting to do version 2 on his home-built or shop-built CNC, so he's going to do that in the magazine. We'll be able to have different features that he's wanted to incorporate into the Woodsmith CNC version, and now we'll be able to have a space for that, and also to have that place for CNC content. Is it for everybody? No, totally get that, but being able to include it periodically in a place like ShopNotes, I think, is a better home for it than Woodsmith. So, all right. In other news, we wrapped up filming on Woodsmith Shop Season 16 last week, which was very, very exciting for us. And it was nice to have that out the door. There's still a bunch of editing that needs to be done by our production folk, and then we'll have that launching in the near future here. It'll start showing in September, I believe, starting in Iowa and a few other markets. If you don't get the Woodsmith Shop TV show on your local public television station, send them an email, give them a call. They're very receptive on scheduling that kind of stuff. And each station sets their own schedule, so I can't say when it's going to start airing, but let them know that it's available starting in September, and hopefully you can start seeing that the new season sooner rather than later.
Yep. Yeah, we got that done just in time to start worrying about the next season. So worked out well. Because when they start overlapping, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the next season done while we're still doing the past season. That spells trouble.
Yeah. And I feel like that almost happens, but that might just be psychologically being close to all this stuff and having done it for 16 seasons now, where, I don't know, we've talked about this here, where it's sometimes in publishing and in TV work, like there's not really a finish line. It's like, we got done with season 16. Hooray. Here's season 17.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yep. There's no off season. So
yeah,
it just keeps coming.
So, John, now that we have the show taken care of, what have you been working on?
I'm trying to catch up on some project design. I have a set of living room built-ins for Woodsmith that needs to be done post-haste. So, haven't started doing drawings for that, but that is on the books. And then the stuff for ShopNotes, so I'm trying to catch up with that as far as the magazine's concerned. So a little extra time to do my day job. But it's hard not to get done with one thing and then try to just like you said, just be like, oh, now we're done, because there's 3 more things that are waiting for you to do next. So
right. Yeah. Well, Dylan and I were talking about that just the other day, or just earlier today, where it was like, what is the next thing that needs to get done immediately?
Yes.
And do that.
Right. And that's pretty much how it works. It's like, I know there's a lot of things to get done around here, but it's like, what needs to get done right now? That's what we'll do.
Right.
Just shout it out. We'll do that.
Now, speaking of projects, Dylan, you've been working on one for Popular Woodworking in kind of an unusual style, in the sense of building it for camera rather than just building a project.
Yeah. So it was one I had been working on, working out the design and, creating the digital model and then working on the drawings. But yeah, there's definitely a certain level of anxiety of doing things on camera, because you're just trying to be conscious of, other people's time who might be involved in the photography process. And then just ensuring that you have all your parts ready to go. And it's really hard to know. Usually on larger projects, there's just really no way to create multiples of things to kind of set yourself up. And so you really do have to rethink the construction process and what's going to make sense. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do everything sequentially how it will probably play out in the magazine, but you do definitely need to be conscious of how things are coming together. Just make sure that, if you have different parts or different joinery methods that happen at the router table, well, one of the steps might happen later in the project, but you have the router table out, so you might as well take advantage of having it out, so you're not always going back and forth and pulling things out, which you inevitably have to do sometimes. So it definitely presents some challenges, but I think there's also a lot of positives too. I kind of alluded to this earlier, where in my mind, I had this thing all worked out in terms of material, how it was going to look, most of the construction. I hadn't really thought through totally the hardware or the finishing. And so in the process of building it, I was able to kind of conjure up those ideas and make those sorts of decisions as I was building them, whether I ran into just a snag with the way the joinery is coming together, or I was having, again, an aha moment about how I wanted to proceed with staining and finishing the project, and just how it's going to make sense in terms of the progress shots for the photography. So it is a little bit different way of thinking about things. But at the end of it, I'm always just kind of impressed, because even though I have been spending, probably a few weeks, maybe a month thinking about this particular project, I had all the panels glued up and most of my parts cut out in order to prepare for photography within a day and a half. And then we built it in a couple days. So grand scheme of things, the project got built pretty quickly, but it is another way of thinking about things in terms of just the mechanics and logistics of how things are going to come together. So, but it's all helpful. It's necessary. So,
what I think has been kind of interesting is both you're building that project for Popular Woodworking, and one of my personal projects are both display cabinets, like small curio cabinets. And it's been really fun to see how each of those have taken a different form. And yet, I've really enjoyed being able to, knowing that you're working on one, just step over into your area and ask you questions about how I would do this, or a design detail, or, just the way I'm designing and building this. You just kind of run into some hiccups and how to get out of those and whatever. So that's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to put some photos on the show notes page on woodsmith.com/podcast, where you can see both of our display cabinets as they currently sit. Not done yet, but yeah, so that's been kind of fun to see that too. So in addition to that one, what else do you have going on, Dillon?
Well, I talked about the hand plane a little bit. That's one of the last projects for ShopNotes that needs to be completed here. I have a marquetry project I'm doing for 264 that I admittedly have given almost zero thought to. But I'm actually really looking forward to it. It's something that I don't know if we've really talked about, or certainly not since I've been here. We've done veneering and stuff, but I haven't really. You correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't really remember us doing a marquetry project. And so it's definitely an area that I'm not proficient at, but I'm super interested in it. Logan and I were just talking the other day about, I think it was maybe David Marks that he did some photography with recently. And he does these like compound veneering projects where he, treats the veneer in a way that it's almost like a tool or like a linen fabric, and he's able to drape them over these, organic forms. And I again, Logan would be able to kind of back me up a little bit more, just the process of it, since you got to actually talk to David. But I'm really intrigued by that, and so I think that's probably really a point of interest in me that might kind of help navigate the project world for that. So I'm guessing it will probably be something on a little bit smaller scale, or be one part of the larger project, and so it's not this overly ambitious
carpentry project, because I'm sure for a lot of people it might be a first time for them. So we'll try and keep it accessible and something that spark enough interest to take up a new discipline within woodworking. So that will conclude 264 for me. Of course, I always have miscellaneous commission pieces that take up space, much valuable space in our ever diminishing shop. So, yeah, I've got these Bahama or Bermuda style shutters I'm building for a bar here in Des Moines, which are, I've got to say, I've done quite a few projects with this bar, and it's been really cool to just watch the interior of it evolve. Just being a part of it, it's really neat. So I'm building these really large, again, Bermuda style wooden shutters that will go. There's 4 large ones and 2 smaller ones, so 6 total. And again, they're quite sizable, but I'll be getting those done here the next week. And then I've got a dining table I'm working on for a guy he had purchased several years ago. It's kind of a fixture in their household, but he recently had some water damage to one of the planks. So I have been going through the process of brainstorming what the best way of repairing it is and making it look, in terms of matching the pre-existing boards. So what I came to is I actually was able to successfully remove the board without damaging it completely. I re-soaked the back, and it's now set up with a series of cauls and clamps. And I have the board completely flat again, which is great. I just have to wait for the water to evaporate and then I'll attach that. So yeah, it's always interesting. I always kind of tell myself after these projects I'm never going to do it again. Here I am doing them and sort of lamenting doing so, but I just look at it as another opportunity to kind of learn something new and problem solve. So that's my positive takeaway.
Cool. All right, I think that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, I want to hear about them. You can send them to me by email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com, or you can leave them in the comments section on our YouTube channel, where you can also watch the video recording of the podcast. Otherwise, I would love it if you could rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to it to help it get out to more folk like you and extend our reach here a little bit. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, everybody, on the ShopNotes Podcast. Bye.